Oh my God, everybody, that was the longest countdown I've ever done to begin a stream. I'm trying new stuff here. I'm trying to elevate the production quality of what we're doing here. Let me get this out of my face. Hello, good evening, and thank you for joining me here on my channel. Hey there, Hellhounds, it's Hades, and we are going to be talking about some stuff today. I know I've been promoting this one for a little bit of time. I've got some great panelists that are joining us this evening. We are going to be talking about silicone body modifications, all the good stuff. Y'all, I've been getting messages about this. I've been posting this in all the kink groups and the puppy groups, and y'all have been like losing your freaking minds over this. So I'm super excited to introduce the panelists. As always, this is a live Q&A, so make sure that you comment below wherever you're watching, whether it's Facebook or YouTube or whatever. Comment your questions, or give us some feedback, and we'll try to get to everybody as follows. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and bring on the guests. So give me 1 second here. Say hello and say hello. Tell me where you're watching from. I always love to see where you all are at. But 3, 2, 1. Here are the panelists for today's live stream. Hello, everyone. How are y'all?
Hello, hello.
Hello.
Good. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. I love doing panel discussions. I always get like little jittery nerves before I go on, but other than that, I'm fine. So we're gonna take just a brief moment to do some introductions for everyone, and then we'll get into the main conversation. And so, Mr. Living Larger, we're gonna go ahead and start off with you. Tell us a little bit about you.
Sure. Let's see, where to begin. I started my silicone journey, if you will, back in 2017. I had been thinking about it. I should say, I was using vacuum pumping on my cock and my balls for about 12 years before I decided, you know what, silicone actually is something that is a real possibility that I could see myself doing. I didn't realize until then it was like something that was accessible. And anyway, without going too deep, I took the plunge, and ever since I've been showing off and enjoying what it's enjoying the journey, enjoying sharing that with people. So you can follow, of course, my Twitter, plenty of examples of my dick, and seeing other people react to my dick and do all sorts of fun things. Living Larger XXX. So there you go.
Sweet, awesome. So that's Living Larger. We'll be referring to you as Daddy from here on out, because I was like, Daddy Living Larger. So, all right. So next up on the list we have Alex. Oh wait, this is not Alex. Hold on. Wait, what is going on here? Okay, Alex Edgewood, go ahead and do a little introduction.
Hey everybody. Yeah, so I'm Alex. I started doing silicone when I was, I think, maybe 20. I'm 24, so I've had it for a few years at this point. I kind of got started back when Tumblr still had porn, so high five to you if you remember when that was a thing.
I miss Tumblr.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I kind of just took the plunge. I just did it. It was a lot of fun for me. I actually had a pretty good community worth of people on Tumblr that kind of helped me throughout the process. Yeah, I don't regret it at all. It's fantastic. I love it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And last but not least, Badger, go ahead and give us a little bit of an introduction.
Hello. So yeah, I'm Pup Badger XXX on Twitter. I started my silicone journey about 4 years ago. Probably when I was right around 22. I actually got it as a birthday gift from a pup who was in the kink. And, as I was an emerging gay and learning about kinks and what I liked, this pup kind of introduced himself to me, and I was fascinated by it. And he asked me if I would like some, and I took the plunge, and I've enjoyed it. Being a go-go boy, working at various strip places and night clubs, it's definitely caught the eye of many people, and it's been fun. It's been a lot of fun.
Awesome. And just for those who are joining us and that didn't catch the disclaimer in the very beginning of this live stream, no one here is a medical professional. If I'm not mistaken, no one here is a medical professional, and so what we're trying to do is to have conversations around kink and BDSM that are taboo, and that some people may shy away from these particular conversations because of many different controversies and whatnot. But really, this is not to give you any sort of medical advice. This is not to instruct you of how to do these procedures. This is really just to get conversations starting around this topic. So again, bear that in mind, and we'll probably say that a million times until we're blue in the face. But just keep that in mind. So, as we go through this conversation, anybody, we're going to start doing some Q&A. If you have questions, make sure that you get them into the comments. I will read them, and we'll select a few to pop on the screen. But each of you have kind of already hinted a little bit about this. But what was the discovery process for you getting into silicone? Describe about what resources or connections did you need to have in order to start exploring that interest further? And anybody can go.
I'll jump in. I'll start.
Yeah, go for it.
All right. So just like I said before, about 4 years ago, when I started, if you guys are from the East Coast or whether the leather events, I started going to MAL, and that's where I first, kind of saw a little bit of a mixture. There were some, guys with saline and then the silicone, and as one little note, I've heard you don't mix the two. So if you go down the silicone path, it's much more permanent than the saline path. So it wasn't something I jumped into right away, but it was something that as I grew to know this, and I'm just going to refer to him as Pup, the pup that had silicone, he was well enlarged. I'm talking when I met him, I think he had around 300 cc's worth of silicone, and then eventually got more. And again, it's kind of funny. He really liked me. He actually is a medical professional, but that's not to say that, like, again, what the notice that we gave before, this is not medical advice. It just so happens that the pup that was interested in me and did it for me was a practicing doctor, and so he was able to really kind of enlighten me on the brighter side of it, because sometimes you just hear about the horror stories, and you got to weigh your pros and cons. But it was through this pup that he actually gave it to me as like a birthday gift. It was my birthday one year, and I had been talking to him for a while, and he'd asked me if I would like to try it, get into it. And I kind of, again, took the plunge. Maybe I should have tried saline first, but I was fascinated by the whole enlargement process and just what went into it. And so he was able to kind of walk me through it, and he was able to help me and did the procedure himself. And that's kind of how I found my way into it. And it's kind of one of those things, just like a tattoo. Once you have done it once, you kind of always have that itch to get more. But I definitely want to take a slow pace with it. I don't want to go too large too fast. It is like a process that you go through, so you just have to know like what you can handle and what you can't handle.
And I want to touch on a few things that you said there, and I want everybody to have the opportunity to answer that question and share their experience. But one thing for people that are not familiar with the verbiage and terminology, cc's. So when we're talking about cc's of silicone, what exactly is that?
So it is the measurement of, not exactly sure about how precise, maybe one of the other guys can touch on it, but it's just the measurement and how much that you have. cc's is, again, I don't know the exact medical terminology.
Cubic
Yep.
centimeters, I think.
Thank you.
It equates over to a milliliter, basically.
There you go. That's the
I'm
one.
bad with math.
The metric system. I don't know.
It's the metric system.
Yeah.
Okay, as Tyler says, cubic centimeter. Okay, thank you, Tyler. And Coop says 1 cc is to 1 milliliter of liquid volume. Okay, so the other thing that I wanted to touch upon in you sharing your experience was the differences between saline and silicone. Can y'all discuss a little bit about that? Like, why would one choose one over the other, maybe, or the, yeah. We'll start there.
I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll respond to that and also add a little bit of the first question as well, which is so saline is very much the same sort of idea as silicone in that you're adding a liquid to expand the tissue of your genitals or some other area, and that effect, the primary difference being saline is temporary. Your body, saline of course is something that's found in your body already. Your body will absorb the salinated water within anywhere from 24 to 48 hours. And so it goes back to, roughly the size it was before, whereas silicone can't be absorbed by the body. The body treats it as an inert foreign substance. And so instead of absorbing it, the body actually puts protective tissue around the silicone to essentially wall it off from the rest of the body. And that's a process called encapsulation. Again, I'm not a medical professional either, but these are concepts that are very, very common knowledge within the silicone community. So just give you that sort of basis. I also wanted to shout out and say Tumblr is where I was inspired as well. I had community. There's a silicone community on Tumblr that I was, active in reaching out to a number of folks on there. Some of which, are now on Twitter, and some of which are no longer active for various reasons. One guy has, since had his silicone removed, which is, something that you see from time to time, and it of course requires extensive surgery to do that if you choose to do, to have it removed. In any case, those folks in that community were my resource, and there's no written guidelines, there's no manual for how to do something, and I think that sort of has its pros and cons. But the pros are, it really forces you as an individual who's dedicated to doing that to reach out and find people who have experienced it or have knowledge, or at least, that say they do. Obviously there's some unreliability in that potentially, but I certainly do not recommend, I do not endorse that people do silicone. In fact, I get questions literally daily through my Twitter about recommendations for how to do silicone, and I always recommend getting involved with pumping and saline first. And if you are really ultimately determined, you will find that community, and you may find the right people to help you guide you down that path. But it's so risky that if you don't know what you're doing, you really are better off not knowing how to do it, because it's something that, unless you have that personal connection with someone who has experience, it would never be something I'd ever want to do looking at a manual or a website or a YouTube video, right? That would be crazy.
Right.
So.
Right. And you can almost find instruction videos to do anything on YouTube now, but probably not this one. Alex, any additional thoughts?
Yeah, so I actually came from the same community on Tumblr, which is kind of funny. There's actually, kind of to Daddy's point, I actually was able to find a ton of knowledge between the Tumblr community, as well as some kind of put together Google Docs that kind of detailed more step by step that whole process. I had a little bit of practice in terms of medical procedures, we'll put it, and I think that maybe helped me with that process. But when people ask me how to do it, I usually don't give them any information. I often, kind of to everyone else's point, I wouldn't recommend doing it if you are not a professional in what you're doing. Although I was lucky with my results, you do kind of see incidents where people do have bad things happen to them. And so that's a big reason that I typically don't even tell people where to find it. But yeah.
Okay. So a common theme here, and like I said, I'm not very knowledgeable on this subject, but it almost seems like a lot of other kinks, in the sense that there's not a lot of formal education out there. You have to find people to guide you through this. There's communities that are around it that kind of support each other in access to information, but to something similar to what Badger said, it reminds me of the old guard practice of handing down leather, right? Somebody to introduce you into okay, what do we call this? Because I'm sure you don't call it do you call it enlarging? Do you call it growing? What's the community verbiage?
Well, you would say it's an injection, or Alex, were you going to say something?
You literally said it.
Oh, there you go.
Okay. Yeah, but so you're finding somebody to almost pass down the knowledge there. And one thing that we see in a lot of kink communities. Well, let me first back up. I'm sorry, this is my train of thought. Do you consider this to be a kink, a lifestyle, or is this just a cosmetic procedure for your own personal gratification?
To answer that, I think it's a little bit of all those things. I think it is a kink. There's a community behind it, and I've definitely learned a lot from that community. But it is a lifestyle choice. Once you go down the road of silicone, it is, a forever changing thing. It it kind of not becomes who you are, but it becomes a big part of who you are, and then there's the third thing you said. What was it again?
So lifestyle kink, or is it like just a cosmetic procedure in order to like for your personal gratification?
So, oh yeah, and then as far as the cosmetic procedure, I mean, it is cosmetic procedure. It is when you go down that path. It For me personally, it was something that I never would have imagined getting into, like, until it was right there in front of me and I had the option to do it. And a very procedural way, medical way. It wasn't something you just willy-nilly want to get into, as they've both said. I personally wouldn't recommend it. It not wouldn't recommend it, but you need to have your knowledge base. You need to do your research, and you need to know what you're getting into, because as I said before, it is a lifestyle choice. It is a major change that you are taking upon yourself, and it has lasting effects. Not everyone, it's not everyone's cup of tea. Some people see it and they give you a weird side eye about it. Some people are just not into it. I used to think I was a very confident person, and it was one of the reasons why I did what I did and, went full throttle into it. And now I think I find myself being more self-conscious, because now I actually consider, well, what does this person think? Even though there are a lot of people out there that like it, that admire it, it's kind of that grass is greener, thing, because I do find myself being more self-conscious about how I'm putting myself out there and what people are thinking of me, which I really didn't think about before taking this lifestyle choice.
Interesting. And each of you have kind of said this, and y'all, I see your comments. I'm fielding through them, and I will definitely pull a few of them here on the screen in just a moment here. But each of you have said that you don't recommend doing this. In some way, whether to what depth into that means of like, don't do this, I don't recommend this. Then why would you do it, like, personally? Like, if you don't recommend it to other people, then why do you do it personally?
I'll respond to clarify, since I had said that earlier, which is I do not recommend that other people do it. I personally have absolutely no regrets. I would do it again. I am very happy with how it came out. Now, not everyone has those feelings. Some people, as I had mentioned, decide that they don't want that after all. Then they have to pay a very high price for removing it. And I don't want to go down a whole rabbit hole here, but, obviously I could never recommend something that could potentially be deadly. So I can't, in good conscience, tell people that I recommend it. It's something that I personally felt compelled to do after understanding and learning these things. It was absolutely something that I needed to do. It was a kind of, almost, I hesitate to say it, but almost a compulsion. I just felt like this is what I need to do. I was ready to accept those consequences. But this is really something that silicone is not for just about everybody. There's a select few that are going to be willing to put up and do whatever it takes. And those people, will learn and hopefully do it the smart way. But that's why I say I don't recommend it, even though I personally have absolutely no regrets and would do it again.
Gotcha. 1 minute here. My camera apparently froze, and I'm looking very upset in this. You have to love technology. Hold on, I'm gonna just make sure that it's okay. I guess.
Like,
I'm gonna
caption that, right?
Yeah. Okay. So here's my nasty Mac
There you
webcam.
go.
We're gonna go ahead and restart my camera just to see if that fixes it. All right, are you gonna work now? Okay, cool, awesome. Let me get back to
There you are.
Okay, cool, awesome. Thanks, comment crew. Thanks for letting me know. All right, so where were we? Sorry about that. I do want to get to some of the comments that are in the chat here. Mark, thank you so much for your comment. I think this is something that we've all been navigating in our personal conversations in preparation for this stream. But as a sub community within the larger kink community, how are you managing the PR of he who should not be named? Obviously, that has brought your kink community into a lot of a broader kink conversation. So essentially what the question is, and I think we know what we're referring to, but I think really at heart here, it's like there's within the kink community, there's these sub communities, right? And some are maybe more acceptable than others. How do you navigate, I guess, your kink in justifying it for yourself and maybe educating people along the way is maybe where I'm going to shift the question. Does that make sense? Did I word that really weird?
So I will kind of attest to this a little bit. As the whole he should not be named, they were definitely a group of people that when I entered the kink, obviously I looked towards, not that I knew any of them personally, other than I had actually met Tank at IML one year, and I have a picture with him, and I adore the picture. I was so happy to meet him. It was like I was meeting a celebrity, meeting someone you look up to. So that was amazing. And, I only had wish I had gotten to know him more. But then it is one of those things that now is a standout in the community is like, again, the horror stories that you hear and why, we would go into not recommending this to people. It is something that will have an everlasting mark on our community, but we want to try to not focus on the bad and bring light to the good. But yeah, like I very much look to those guys because that was part of the fascination, part of the kink, part of why I got into it was because I saw them and what they had. And I was like, wow, like that's awesome. That's hot. That's cool, sexy, all of those things. And then it's, again, just not what it seems to be on the outside. There's so much going on behind closed doors that you never know about. And so it left definitely a big mark on all of us, I feel, but I still have that picture of me and Tank, and I will always smile upon it when I look at it. Cause again, I'm not a big guy myself. I am 5'3" and 120 pounds. So part of this, growth or enlargement, kind of comes from that. Like I've always been fascinated with like bigger men, just the kind of the opposite of me, just like whether you're taller, you're larger, like I've always loved that size difference. And so that was part of the kink that I enjoyed was, here's little 5'3" me, but then, I kind of got something to show. And the picture of me and Tank is so hilarious because it's just this big old guy, and he's looking great. And then like little me standing next to him, like looking up to him, like he's my idol, like maybe I'll be as big as him one day. And so, yeah, I will always try to take the good from every situation and remember those parts of it. And, not to brush it under the rug of what happened, but it's just one of those things that you don't want to harp on the bad. You just want to take away the good.
So I don't know. I want Alex to respond too. I don't want to do all the talking here, but a couple of things. Obviously, that situation, there was a lot more going on than silicone, right? I think we all have to acknowledge there were other forces in that situation that made it an incredibly bad and, in fact, very unhealthy situation. And that is not to be discounted. You cannot lay this at the foot of just one thing.
Right, and I agree with you. I think that anybody could look at any situation and say, I'm sure there's a lot of people that look at pup play and see it as dehumanizing, which, you know, if that's your kink and that you want to take it in that direction, and use they could attribute that as being this awful thing that led this person down a horrible path, you know, and personal demise.
And I hear you, and in particular, what I want to go with this is to say, it is very commonly understood in the silicone community, there are right ways to do things and there are wrong ways to do things, and there is certainly debate between the two around the edges. However, one important thing is how much and how fast. Okay, well, there's two things, but they're very related. And there are very clearly safer ways to do things and less safe ways to do things. And from what I don't have any firsthand knowledge of this, but my understanding is those safer community understandings were not something that were followed in that case. And in fact, that is a very common thread among people with health issues and death is you will find that what the community consensus is on the right ways to do things and risk mitigation techniques are typically not followed when you find these cases of death or serious complications, which obviously there's no guarantees. There's no guarantee that any amount of silicone will not be a problem for you, but like I say, there's risk mitigation techniques which are commonly understood, and if you're smart, you will find people who know and understand this, and you will follow them. And that did not happen there. So, you know, yeah.
And just for the viewers that are watching, like, obviously this is a subject matter that has often gone hand in hand with this specific conversation, and we're not going to get into all that. We're not going to talk about the details of all that, only as it pertains to the conversation relating to their experiences, and the overarching conversation like this specifically, but we're not going to, get into all that. Alex, I wanted to give you the opportunity to also respond before I moved on to a point made by the audience.
Yeah, honestly, this was all kind of happening in the background to me getting like what I had. So I mean, I was kind of in and out of the community while this was going on. So by the time that I'd heard of most of it, it had already passed. I mean, obviously, if you're doing bad things, then you should probably receive bad judgment. And I think that it definitely came back. Obviously, I mean, there's no longer this online presence anymore, but to kind of something that Daddy said, I'm sitting at just under like 800 cc's, and where that like really comes into play is that's something that built up over the course of like 2 years. So there's a safe way to do things and then less acceptable way to do things, for sure.
Absolutely. Pup Cruise and the Gamer Pups are watching right now. My family, my streamer family. But this point comes from Pup Cruise, and it was a really interesting conversation that we had before this stream as well. But when I was putting together the stream, obviously this is very focused on a penis and testicle parts, this injection process and this growing process. But what they had mentioned was that so the trans community has been using it, I'm assuming silicone, for ages as cheaper means to deal with their bodies and making them into something that's more appropriate to them. Within the silicone community, do you see it? Do you see these conversations being had as far as like trans bodies versus like cis male bodies? Is it something that is openly discussed, or do y'all have any experience as far as that particular subject goes?
No,
No.
I've never
I
seen
think
it.
they're
Okay.
very. Go ahead, Badger.
So I do have a little bit of experience in this, and just that another one of the pups that was siliconed, enlarged, injected. Another person that I highly looked up to, loved dearly, was into pup play. They are trans and have trans or are transitioning now, and I still think they are a beautiful person for who they are, and it's a phenomenal process to kind of see them in their transition and what they're going through, because I can only imagine, I mean, what they are actually going through personally on the inside to be, at one point some very big muscle, all about enlarging, process, muscled out pup, to now coming out as a feminine woman and, making that transition process. That's the only real experience I have of this topic with it, but I still, applaud them for who they are and what they go through, and, that how it touches on the body dysmorphia and just all those things that we kind of live with, that, every day, whether it be a struggle or a journey, you go through, and you take it day by day, step by step, and whatever that process is, or however you find yourself getting through it, having a great support system to back you through it is always important. So that's the, only one personal person that I know that has gone through a transition process from enlarging to then actually being trans. And again, I don't want to speak to their experiences or what they go through, but I still admire that person for who they are, and look up to them very much.
Daddy, you were going to
So
say something? Yeah.
yeah, well, I think the heart of it, you can see this, and I think viewers of the TV show Pose may remember one of the plot lines was one of the characters um, has a woman, injecting silicone, or it's actually, I don't recall actually if it was implied or stated that it was silicone, but something um, to make the character look more curvy and feminine. And that's true. That is, in fact, if you look at the medical literature on silicone injection, of which there is some amount, I personally read quite extensively, um, going through various publications that I could access online, to look at medical studies that dealt with, most of it is patient reports, um, that doctors will write up their experiences dealing with population, and very often they are trans women who have injected silicone, that goes into these populations in the medical literature. um, and yeah, this is not new. This has been around for decades as a very, relatively inexpensive way to make our bodies more the way that we want them to be. And I think what you'll find, there are, and I would encourage anyone is actually interested in genuinely pursuing this to do their own medical research. I don't think enough people do that. Um, there are, short-term risks and long-term risks, and I think there's one of the anyway, without going into it too much, the time of injection is very important in how that's done, but also there's potential impurities in the product used, which historically has been a lot of the source of the issues that have been associated with the trans community using, or poor practices in terms of not using sterile equipment and things of that nature. So, but yes, I don't think that the conversations to your question are the same in the the cis male community as they are in the generally it's trans women. Yeah. Oh, I think you're on mute.
Yes, I'm muted.
I can't. All right.
So,
There you go. Yep.
Hachi brought up a really good point, and this is something that I was thinking about as you were all sharing your experiences and how you got immersed into this community. So I'll just read this comment. So I hear the word community a lot in this conversation. However, from what I understand, everything is talked behind closed doors. Someone mentioned that their online presence is gone. How do you maintain the community feel and connections when everything is so dark nowadays? How do you get those support structures? So and Daddy, you and I had kind of spoke about this a little bit through private message about how safeguarded the community is, how it is very much like there's almost like a verification process in order to like access this information. Can y'all speak to that?
I mean, since you'd mentioned, I'll say it's available if you know who to ask. I suppose in terms of the communities, there are, Facebook chats and Discord servers and things of that nature. So it's out there, but you're right that they are frequently shut down. So the problem is, there is a vetting process that happens, and letting in people who are not truly, I guess, like the best guidepost that people have found is, do you have silicone? If you've done it, then fine. But if not, it's a very hard, you have to get someone to basically vouch for you, for some of the information.
Alex, you were going to respond to that. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I mean, basically everybody that you find that has it, I would say like I'm probably one of the more rare ones where I don't have a huge online following. But like a lot of people, like you message people with, 30,000+ followers on either Insta or Twitter. And that's kind of how you get your foot in the door. So how it worked with me was it was with someone that was on Tumblr. I messaged them like, 2 or 3 weeks later. I'm sure it took them to get to their inbox. They kind of got back to me. Things are kind of different now, I think, since that incident that we were mentioning earlier. And, now it's like the contacts that I had that were there, I talked to on a day-to-day basis. Whereas, even like the supplier that I went through kind of went underground when all of that happened. So even getting it is a little bit more difficult now than it was then. For sure. So it's interesting for sure.
And to follow, Hachi asked a follow-up question, but so why is there this vetting process? What about it? What is safeguarding the community? Why, or more so, why does the community feel like it needs to be safeguarded in such a way that there is that process?
I think it gets shut down. That's my answer. And go ahead, Badger. But like what I was going to say is like all of the groups and the servers and everything, they don't stay. They just keep getting shut down. And so I think that's for, as far as I'm aware, that's the reason.
Yeah, and then to touch on it, and I kind of said this earlier, it's not everyone's cup of tea. It is something that people stick their nose up to or, turn away from. So it is definitely something that, like, as much as it's a sub community and sub kink that we all kind of find our way into, we're very accepting of, as they kind of mentioned, like, oh, you have silicone, okay, here you go, here are resources, like, welcome to this group of people. But it's not to say that everyone does it right or everyone does it well. And so it's one of those things that when you've kind of found your way to get your foot in the door, it's just one of those things that it's a very tight-knit group. Like, it's not just pup play, which is everywhere and all over, and so many people are into it, and everyone has their different venue. This is a very small subculture of people that, have gotten into this, and I feel like there's just that want to safeguard it. And even when Daddy mentioned it before, some people go the route of getting it removed. They're still part of our community, and people still want to talk with them about their process, because if someone else is going through that, they might then look to that person with like, oh, well, how should I think about getting it removed, or what should I do? And there are complications that come with this kink. This isn't just like, oh, I'm into some spanking, or, I like a little nip play. Like, this is something that it goes into that lifestyle choice, that once you've made this lifestyle change, it's not always easy to cope with. I feel like, personally, the biggest thing that I see is finding a doctor that will see you and treat you normally. That, I feel like, is the biggest issue within the community, is that then if something does go wrong, finding someone who will actually look into the process and work with you and take you through it seems to be the biggest issue. It's not everyone's cup of tea, and everyone kind of has their complications. So it's something that people will turn away from you from, and that's why we're so close knit and tight. And like, again, the resources are out there: Facebook groups, Discord servers. They both mentioned that they found their communities through Tumblr. So it's out there. You just have to know the right people to talk to, and that was the way I found it. Was the pup that introduced me. He was the one that added me to the Facebook groups and said, hey, here's some people in your area, that you can talk to about it.
Right. Now, like, and going back to something that you had mentioned earlier, Badger, as far as like, you had this sense of like self-confidence before injecting silicone, and now you kind of have issues with confidence at moments, and you're worried about the way that people maybe perceive your because of the way that your genitals look. To all of you, what is, I guess, the repercussions of morphing your body in a way to where people, almost like reject it? Like, how do you navigate that? Is it something that bothers you? Is it something that comes up often? Are you monitoring how many cc's you have in order to, like, you know what I'm trying to say? I don't know what I'm trying to say, but I think you know what I'm trying to say. Someone help me.
So since you brought up what I said earlier, the self-confidence, it's one of those things. Like, I'm a go-go boy, and I feel like we've probably all been down that path. And I've worked at a strip joint or two, and one of the big questions I started getting was, is that really you? Or are you pumping? And it is me. I'm not pumping, but it is it. Those questions were never there before. So now I'm having to find myself answering these questions that people bring to me. And for a while, I wasn't sure how openly I wanted to be about it, how open I wanted to be about it. But then to a certain extent, if people are going to turn their nose up at me, then like, those aren't the people I want to be around anyways. And just and not that, we can expose ourselves, but I feel like mine was very well done. I was able to cater it well, so my healing process went very well. So to like one extent, it still looks like very natural for the most part, and I don't have a lot as much as like Daddy does. He is, again, someone I like look up to, because I'm just like, wow, will I get to that point someday? It's beautiful, it's gorgeous, but I only have 100 cc's myself. I have some in like my balls, and then some in my cock, so it's kind of balanced. So again, not that process of not going too far too fast. And I got mine done 4 years ago, and actually haven't revisited it since. As Alex said, it's kind of been hard to find, and I was lucky that I got it when I did, and didn't have a cost to pay, because the pup was giving it to me as a gift. And again, I went through all those hoops with him, but yeah, there's cost behind it. The growing process is not something you want to rush. So again, if people have questions, before I used to get very inside myself about like what information I was giving out or what I was telling people. And then, being a go-go boy, it's one thing when people are looking at you from across the bar, and it's fun to get up and throw your junk around and catch some eyes or two. But then some people, again, they don't want to associate or deal with it, and that's fine, and you learn to deal with those people at the longer you have it. And so I've learned to maneuver around those kind of conversations and those people that I don't want to be around. And then to a certain extent, a lot of the people that I am around, they do like it and they admire it. Some people have told me, oh, well, you didn't need to do that. And I said, yeah, I didn't need to, but I wanted to. And when I had the chance to do it, as he said, it was like a compulsion. Daddy said it was something that I was, I really had to think about for a second, but I really, when I thought about it, it was just like, why not? Like, if I have the chance to do this and, I'm, going to change this part of me, let's do it. Like, let's jump into it. And I just took it full force. I hope that answered the question.
Yeah,
kind of.
totally.
I can be wordy too.
Daddy or Alex, do y'all have thoughts on that?
Absolutely. So I work at one of the largest investment firms in the world. And if I had a single day where either my boss or my client...
Should we change your name to Daddy? Okay.
No. If I had a day where either like my boss or my client was not like eyeing me up, like it's a rare day. And so like Daddy and I are really close to the same size. So you probably put up with it just as much as I do. But like if you're in like any kind of outfit, it's completely visible at our size. It just is. So, I mean, to me, I just go in, I just radiate this like alpha Chad energy, and it's a good day. But like
Alpha Chad,
they absolutely see it. They absolutely are like, what is that?
I just
Alpha Chad. What's up? It's me. So yeah, fun stuff.
Okay, yeah.
I will add to that. I mean, I think I would echo the same thing. Although I will say, the reason I don't share, who I am more publicly is I'm in a profession that's quite conservative. And hats off, to those who feel like they're able to put their face out there. Unfortunately, I do not. Simply, as I say, it's a career question for me, and that's really all there is to it. Maybe someday. But at the office, when we had an office and went there, yeah, I mean, there's I wear underwear that are that push it down, and I wear only dark colors, and I have to think about how I dress very thoughtfully. But yeah, I mean, and even then, of course, I can tell people that their eyes will very subtly go there and then go away, and it's there is no hiding it, and I don't mind it most of the time. In my personal life, I don't mind it at all. I think it's fun. I've never really had a terribly negative experience in my personal life about it, or for that matter, professional. People are too polite to really gawk in a professional setting. Right. Thank God. But yeah, there's definitely no denying that it's there, and the judgment factor for sure. And I'm pretty active. I just started fan sites not that long ago, and certainly I message other people who make content about collaborating and that sort of thing, and absolutely there's a lot of people we can talk afterwards. But there are definitely people out there who are like, it's really a minority who say like, that's just totally a turn off. I'm sorry, that's not really my thing. Most of the time it's like, that's great, but I wouldn't know what to do with that. And, I totally respect that. there's no way that I could fit that in my, whatever orifice, and fine, I totally respect that too. But definitely some people are like, well, essentially I'm treated like a freak, which in fact I am. So, it's understandable. It's not for everyone. Partners, I think I'm not ever going to date someone who's vanilla and not kinky. So, I'm not so worried about that. But I know a lot of folks who have partners who are vanilla, and it's kind of weird to them and not very attractive. And I don't know that I would ever be able to do that with a partner who felt that way. But dating, if you're into a guy who's, you know, you want a more traditional looking relationship, and you're open to vanilla guys, you're gonna face some rejection, no doubt about it. So
Yeah, and here's like I think a question that's on my mind, of course, and on a lot of people's mind is how does the modification, how do the injections impact your sexual life? Do you find that sex is more difficult, or that you have to change the ways that you engage in sex now that you are, you know, living larger? No pun intended. But I mean,
so I'll be happy to speak to that. Initially, when I did mine, and I did my, both my ball sack and the shaft of my dick, I actually kind of had to relearn how to have sex a little bit, in the sense of the sensation changed. I get a lot of questions. One of the most popular questions is, can you still feel everything? The answer is yes. I still feel everything, but it feels different. It's not better. It's not worse. It's different. And what gives me pleasure and what doesn't changed a little bit. So how the style in which I top has changed, the style in which I like my dick sucked has changed. So, if you watch my porn, you'll see like I like people who suck my dick to fondle my balls, because my balls are now much more sensitive than they ever were before, and so it's great. But so yeah, there's changes, and it took me a while. Like, initially, I was kind of like, oh my god, what did I do? And then I just learned, oh, okay, it's still pleasurable. I just have to, do things a little differently.
Gotcha. Anybody else want to speak to that point, or Badger, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna give Alex a chance. Maybe he wanted to say something.
Oh,
I'm a virgin. I don't have sex. No, absolutely. Sensitivity's great.
Yeah, and just the same thing. Things are different. You have to learn how to do things with your new, setup. Especially when I first had it done, there were like sensitive spots that if they got nicked in the right way, would not be pleasurable. And then over time, because again, I've had the same amount for 4 years, it kind of all evened out and everything. Again, as he said, you just learn how to do things differently and work with your new setup.
sorry, like my computer's being all sorts of weird. Yeah, awesome, cool. Let me get back in here. And there's been a lot of questions since I've last checked. So people do want to know. Like I can't remember who touched on it as far as like working with healthcare professionals. That how has that kind of changed when they are when they receive you, as far as like, you know, the silicone injections? They obviously see that it's a modification of some sort. How has your treatment been impacted by silicone?
So since I brought it up, I'll touch on it real quick. Some are into learning about it. Some ask questions. Some want to know. my primary care doctor, when obviously I came into the office one day and something had changed, he was like a little aghast, but then he was, he learned again through the time. He was like, okay, this is just who you are. This is, just another thing, and it was fine. But then I did have one doctor who pretty much passed me off to another doctor. I don't know if it was for his own religion beliefs or whatever it was, but pretty much I went into the doctor to be seen, and I guess wanted nothing to do with it. Was more or less kind of just like a, why did you get that done? We can fix this for you. And I just, kind of said, like, well, it doesn't need to be fixed. It's, just is what it is. Is it really such an issue? So again, and within our communities, I've seen a lot of talk, people will say, is there anyone that knows of a silicone friendly doctor, just as you try to look for a doctor that's LGBT friendly. So doctors that understand kink, if you're into certain kinks and, like impact play, and you want to find a doctor that's not going to question you and what you're doing, then you look for a doctor that is okay with kink or LGBT friendly. And it's just, in a way, it's just similar to that. It's just, you have to find a doctor. And again, some of the doctors I've had have asked questions and actually been open to learning about it, and that's refreshing.
Any additional thoughts?
I've had, oh, well, I don't want to add a lot except, I've actually gone to gay doctors for the period of time since I had my silicone, and I just switched doctors. But he said, I told him about the silicone. He says, and he looked up and he says, is it giving you any issues? And I said, no. And he said, no, okay. And then he moved on, and that was it. And I've gone to see a urologist, and I refer to myself as his most interesting patient, for a variety of reasons. But yeah, he's totally cool with it. It's just sparked some interesting conversation, but he's not judgmental about it. But again, I'm in a metropolitan area. I don't know that everyone has people. And I also was referred to him by, the practice that specializes in gay clientele. So I don't know that everyone would be as fortunate. I don't know if Alex has experiences.
No, most of them that I've spoken to, they just want to know what it is. I mean, I've honestly had more issues at TSA than I have at like hospitals, with like, what is this? So, and like, not to be funny, but like I get stopped every time. I don't know if that's just a me thing.
Really? That's a thing? Well, okay. It does look like you're smuggling something, but I mean, that's a thing. Okay, that's a thing. I learned. Okay.
Yeah, it does happen. I've had the pat down, and it shows up on the if you have pre-check and they have the scanner that you raise your hands up, and it shows up as a little like you can see the image, and it shows up as a little blob, where your silicone is, and it shows up like, sir, there's an anomaly on your scan. We need to investigate. So, yep, okay, I know. Yeah, so they do.
Does that
and actually,
make you feel violated in any way? Like when they, like, because you're being, obviously this is happening in front of so many people,
Well, I mean, number one, I made this choice, and this is one of the consequences, but also I'm an exhibitionist, so, if I was not so inclined, I might feel differently.
TSA is kind of violating, to begin with. I mean, when you're going through like a millimeter wave machine, like even if you don't have silicone, it's not like everything's not completely invisible. But I think to me, it's just kind of silly. I mean, it's obviously, I think, for everyone's best benefit, but I think most people, and I would say probably the other two panelists would agree, like at some point you just get used to it, I think. And I think, again, to the exhibitionist point, I think for the amount of silicone that I have, that's absolutely funny to me from like an exhibitionist standpoint. So,
Speaking about like exhibitionism, like what was there a kink that you were into prior that kind of helped you find this? Like Badger, I know that you talked about the pup that introduced you, but was there a kink gateway per se for you to find this silicone modifications?
Yeah. So for me, it was like basically just being huge. So like I think the body mod community in general, that seems to be like a thing. I've like atrophied quite a bit, but I used to be like ridiculously ripped. So that was kind of my deal. I had this kind of like whole image going in. Now that I work and I do a lot more. I'm not in college anymore. I don't work out as much as I used to, but that was, I think, kind of what got me into it. Was this kind of whole appearance or image. I mean, now, I love it, so I haven't gotten rid of it. And honestly, to everyone else's, point, it is a hassle to get rid of. But yeah.
Daddy?
Pumping was my gateway. As I say, I did that for a very long time. A pumped dick looks pretty similar to a silicone dick. And I wanted it to be permanent, and it was pretty clear that was the path.
Awesome. We've got about 7 minutes left on this live stream, so y'all, if you have some questions, make sure that you get them in to the comments. I will try to get to as many of them as possible. I'm going to go back up here. But one thing that I wanted to know from y'all, like, what is a common, maybe a common misconception or a stigma that's associated with your community that may need to be like wiped away, or that you could shine some light on?
The only thing that I would say is that every person that does silicone is indiscriminately gambling with their life, and that is true to a degree, but it totally disregards the fact that there is a community of knowledge about safer practices that exist and risk mitigation that exists. And I'm not telling you that it's safe. It's absolutely not, but it's not done without thought and research. At least it shouldn't be. So yes, it is dangerous, and yes, you cannot make it. But don't think that everyone who does it isn't aware or hasn't thought about how to make it the least risky thing possible. I don't think there's very few people that I have met who are really just risk takers, and that's all that they, are doing. So, yeah, and the other thing that goes along with that, as I said, there are long-term risks and short-term risks. The short-term ones, that at the time of injection, are the ones that are the most serious. So, I am not injecting anymore, or at least nothing material, maybe small amounts possibly, but nothing that would put me at a significant risk. And so my risk profile is very, very low in terms of complex or like potentially fatal or, serious issues. So, it's not, I'm not continuing to live my whole life at risk of dying at any time. So that would be the only myth that I would put to rest.
Any other thoughts on that? No? Good.
He kind of said it.
Okay. I do want to see this. Cruz asks, can the exhibitionist on cam please stand up and flex? LOL. I mean, I'll stand up and flex. Ah, that's my flex. I'm definitely an exhibition.
Be able to do this. There you go. I'm not going to stand.
Here we go. Always. Oh my
there
god.
There we go.
Yes, I'm here for it. Oh, okay. Let me read this real quick. Oh, that's a good question. So, back to the issue of stigma. So, what do you think can be done to reduce the stigma around this? What can we do, like as the overall BDSM kink community? What can we do to reduce stigma?
I think just like with anything else, knowledge is key. The more you know, it just makes it easier on everyone. If there's something that you don't know or unsure about, ask a question. Don't go spreading rumors or making up stuff if it's not true, or just simply, if you have a better lack of knowledge of it, do the research and find it out. And I guess that there's a lot of stigma that comes with the event that we talked about earlier, but that's not what the whole community is. And so if there's something that you don't know, simply just ask questions. We'll talk about it. We're not, scary people. We're not any different. We're still the same kinksters that you are. And, we like the same things that you do. So just ask a question.
Awesome. I love that. And to that point, I want to ask one final question. And I'll give y'all a minute to think about this, but like, why, going back to all the controversy surrounding this issue, all the stigma, I don't want to say gatekeeping, but the vetting of information that gets dispersed throughout your particular community, why did you personally agree to come on here and share your experience? And whoever wants to go first can go first, and we'll just take it from there.
I'll volunteer to say I appreciate that Badger is willing to answer questions from everybody. On my Twitter, I get pretty overwhelmed, and I unfortunately do not have time to respond to all the requests. And in fact, I don't generally provide requests for silicone information on one-on-one requests. There's some, some very basic information that is on the web that I encourage people to look at, but I, can't possibly respond to every request. But there are, if with diligence and time, you will find someone who can. Oh man, I totally blanked on what was the actual question that you were going to ask me.
The question was, like, why did you decide to come on the stream?
Thank you. So this was a good forum for me to actually provide in a way that, because I don't have time to answer those one-on-one questions, hopefully people who are interested can watch the stream and have this collective knowledge that we just can't, I just can't provide on an individual basis. So that was my way of trying to help educate a little bit, since I can't do it for every single person.
Awesome. Alex, thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that's probably kind of what Living Larger said is really similar to kind of how I feel. I get that kind of a question all the time. How do you do it? Where did you get it? And I on principle don't typically even explain. And when I do, it's usually like, hey, here's some very topical information, just because it is something that's a little bit more dangerous. And if you don't have someone physically there, then it's very dangerous. The opportunity when it came up was I saw a friend that I have that's kind of also a kinkster comment on your post. And I was like, yeah, it might be a good time to talk about it. But yeah.
Awesome. And Badger.
So for me, I actually think that this is one of the first times I've been as open and transparent about it for even myself. In the 4 years that I've had it, I've kind of hid away, not hiding it from anyone, but I never really knew how to talk about it. So having this open forum kind of gave me the chance to put myself out there and not only be honest with myself, but try to be as honest with the community and people who have questions about it, and to just give a little insight. I wasn't even sure how much I would say, but I'm a chatty Cathy, and once I get talking, I can't stop. So thank you for having this open forum and this live stream, because it's given me the chance to even kind of be real with myself about it and the whole process of it.
And I want to thank all of you for. I think it's important that we start to have more open discussions about sex and kink and BDSM and our bodies and how we feel about our bodies, especially in this time when a lot of us are still in isolation or quarantine or limited connectivity to other people, that we kind of withdraw into ourselves and we're constantly thinking about how we're presenting to the rest of the world. It's really important for us to take time and patience and understanding with one another. So I do want to say, and I don't say this very lightly, because I think the term brave gets thrown out there kind of frivolously at some points, but I think that each of you were very brave in coming onto this live stream and sharing your experiences and your thoughts. And so I want to thank you all from this has been an amazing stream. So thank you all very much. And with that is the end of this Sunday live stream. Y'all, I hope you enjoy a cocktail or whatever. If you want to smoke some weed or whatever after this, enjoy it all. But until the very next time, that's the end of the live stream from all of us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all very much
Thanks,
for
guys.
joining us. Make sure that you follow me on YouTube and on Facebook at the Pup Hades, or on Facebook at the Pup Hades 666. And until next time, see you later, Hailhound.